HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business. Whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing, guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is enjoying inclusion on lists of the best podcasts to listen to, from MSNBC's Your Business to Inc.com, Proven, Fit Small Business, People First, a whole bunch of other sites. This podcast is continuing to gain recognition as a great resource for small business owners, entrepreneurs, sales professionals. This is really because of the people who come on the podcast to have a conversation with me, share their expertise so that all of you can do better things in your business. And today we have such a person. My guest today is Chris Field. In life, there are dreamers and there are doers. Some people, like Chris Field, are blessed to be both. He launched Mercy Project in 2010 to combat child trafficking in Ghana's fishing industry. To date, Mercy Project has rescued, rehabilitated, and reintegrated more than 100 children back into their families. Their innovative approach to end child slavery has garnered them national awards. Chris has broken multiple Guinness World Records, run dozens of marathons, organized enormous fundraisers, created viral internet campaigns, taught himself to auctioneer, and brought down walls. And Chris is also the author of Disrupting for Good. Thanks so much for joining me today, Chris.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. I love this whole subject of disruption. But I do think it's interesting. So most people, when they hear the word disruption, it has a negative connotation, but you are making it something positive by, talking about disrupting for good. So can you talk about how good can come from disruption?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that, like you said, most of us do initially bristle at the idea of disruption being a positive thing. It's like, wait, my teachers in school always told me to stop being disruptive, and my parents told me to stop causing a disruption. And what's interesting is that some of those things that make young people pretty annoying, and some of the things that made me pretty annoying when I was a kid, are actually exactly what you want in entrepreneurs. And that is question the status quo, push back on boundaries, ask good questions, never be satisfied with oversimplified answers. I mean, there's all of these things. And so what I started looking into was, what does it look like to be someone who disrupts for good? And the definition of disruption, or to disrupt, is just to stop the normal continuance of something. And it doesn't take very long watching the news or opening a newspaper to realize there's a lot of things around us that the normal continuance is something that absolutely needs to be stopped. And so that's the call, is to be the kind of person who's a disruptor for good and stopping those things.
Okay, so that's really interesting, because that really says that, I really like that a lot, to put the wheels in motion, to, stop something, to stop something that has become the norm. So what does it look like? We hear all this stuff about you should be a disruptor in business and blah, blah, blah. And I think most people are feeling like, okay, but I just want to open my dry cleaner, or I just want to have my retail store, and I want it to do well. And retail's an area that really has been disrupted. So like, what do you say to someone? How can they see this and see that they are disrupting, and that it is a good thing? I know it sounds like a strange question, but I'm hoping you follow it.
Yeah, I do. So I think there's two definitions I actually wrote for a disruptor. So the first one is, a disruptor is someone who dismantles accepted norms and forges unimagined futures. And the second one is that a disruptor is uncomfortable with a current truth. So they show up, take action, and persist until a new and better truth is born. And so when you ask that question, immediately the first thing I think of, somebody who wants to start a retail store, they want to have a dry cleaners, there's some truth that they're uncomfortable with that's going to cause them to go into business. Maybe they don't want to work for somebody else. They want to work for themselves. Maybe they want the flexibility, which is not going to come from a dry cleaners, at least initially, but maybe they want the flexibility of being their own boss, or they want to be able to model to their kids what it looks like to take risk and to be willing to sacrifice for something you believe in. I mean, there's so many reasons someone would start a business, but if you trace those reasons back, I guarantee you there's some truth that someone's uncomfortable with, which leads them to starting a business. So I absolutely think that it's relevant to a business of any type. Now, once you get into that business, I think it takes continuous disruption and innovation to be a successful business. So what are the truths of your industry that are uncomfortable? So let me use an example. I work closely doing some consulting with a car dealership. And if you've ever bought a car, Diane, it's typically at the top of somebody's goal list of things to do in a day, right? It's a very painful, in some ways, archaic kind of process, okay? So when I started consulting with this car dealership, and they said, look, Chris, we want people to not hate us, right? We want people to not hate the process of buying a car. What do we need to do? I said, what's the first thing? Why do people dislike it so much? And they said, it's just so high pressure. Everything, that's what people tell, buying a car is high pressure. And I said, okay, So maybe the most disruptive thing you could do for your little niche in the car business, make car buying fun. That's what you need to tell every employee, every manager, every person who washes cars from the second somebody steps on the car lot. What do we have to do to make car buying fun? And if you can solve that, I think the other pieces are going to fall into place. So we could go through and do this exercise with every single business. I don't know if you're familiar with Chick-fil-A, but
sure.
Chick-fil-A, what did they disrupt? They disrupted crummy customer service at fast food places, right?
Yeah.
Fast food places are notorious for having employees who are lackadaisical and seem uninterested in being there, okay? So Chick-fil-A created a training process that both in their hiring and in their training, the employees are engaged and they seem genuinely happy to be at work. That is disruptive in the best way possible. And I promise you, it came because somebody at Chick-fil-A long ago when he founded it, Truett Cathy, he was uncomfortable with the truth of fast food restaurants and some of the realities. And so this is applicable to every business and nonprofit and everything.
This is so great. I really love this way of looking at things because it offers so much opportunity to differentiate, right? To be the one that stands out from all the others in your field.
Absolutely. I think if people would think about their business in this way, what are the truths that are uncomfortable about my industry? What are the truths that are uncomfortable about my niche, my business, my town? That I find that it's actually overwhelming, the number of opportunities that come when we start to ask this question, that it's not a matter of us deciding what we're supposed to do. It's choosing what of the many things we could be doing and choosing those things, right? At this point in my life, it is not difficult to fill my time. The question is what to fill my time with. So I have dozens of ideas I'm sitting on every single day in addition to all the things I'm already doing. And it's because of this way of thinking has completely and totally changed the way I view the world. And when I see a business that's doing poorly or a niche or an industry that's not well run, all I'm thinking about is how could I disrupt this in a way that leveraged for income for myself, because it's that when you start viewing the world like that, it's overwhelming, all the opportunities you see.
For sure. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So in your book, you write about like regular everyday people who are disrupting. And we've talked about a couple of them here, but I'm wondering if you can give us a couple other examples, because I think if people can hear, we look at people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all those people, and okay, they feel like they're outliers.
Right.
But I think if people can hear more of what is just, everyday folk doing this kind of thing, it'll sink in stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost named the book Disruptors Next Door because
that would be great.
Yeah, because I wanted people to realize that the only thing that keeps us from doing so many of these things is our own fear and our own unwillingness to take risk. And for me, Diane, my life was changed forever when my desire to do great things outgrew my fear of failure. And when I stopped being afraid to fail, or rather, when my fear was more that I would live an insignificant life in which I didn't capitalize on my gifts, when that was stronger than my fear of failing, all of a sudden the world completely opened up in ways that I never knew possible. So let me tell you a couple stories. And then if you want me to keep going, I'll do that. But for brevity, I'll just hit these briefly. And these are all covered in depth in the book. So Some of my favorite stories are the nursing home in Seattle that put a daycare inside the nursing home so that the elderly residents could interact with the young people while their parents were at work during the day. And that simple way of thinking 25 years ago when they started this place, that is so revolutionary to take an established sort of a nursing home is not just a business, it's an institution, right? I mean, and if you've been in a nursing home, you know they're not fun places to be. I mean, they're hard. There's a certain smell. There's just a feeling. And so to imagine the last nursing home you went in to be filled with laughing, joyful children with applesauce on their pockets, like, is such a beautiful vision. And that was such a disruptive decision. And then there's the lady named Mama Hill, who teaches for 40 years in the public school system in Los Angeles. And then instead of retiring, she starts an after-school program in her 800 square foot house, this little 2-bedroom house. Kids who are much more likely to find themselves in danger or in prison than they are graduating from high school have benefited from her vision to help this next generation. And for 56 years now, when you include her time as a public school teacher and her time there with her nonprofit after school, she's been disrupting what seems like the normal progression for most kids in a neighborhood like the one she lives in. And then there was the story of a young man named Easton LaChapelle, who at 14 years old built a prosthetic robotic arm out of Legos and fishing wire. And when he saw that the response to this from a little girl with a real prosthetic arm was so positive, and he realized how much prosthetics cost, he actually went to building a real prosthetic arm. 14 years old, okay, when he starts this journey. He ends up building a prosthetic arm that can be 3D printed off the internet, open source, for a few $100s, and goes on to do an internship at NASA instead of going to college, so that he can help NASA actually control a robotic arm for a robot they were wanting to send out into space. So there's so many stories. I could go on and on and on with these. There's 15 different stories in the book exactly like this, of people, some truth they were uncomfortable with. And so they chose to disrupt that truth and to create a new and better truth.
That is so great. And I don't want you to tell me more because I do want people to read the book. Those are great examples.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have some more questions for you. And one of them is going to be, I'm really curious, I want to know where it is you got the idea to stop child slavery in Ghana. So hang on to the answer, because we're going to come around to it as soon as I'm done with our sponsor break. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have over 150,000 titles to choose from, and you can listen to them on any device, including whatever you're hearing us on right now. And if you sign up at our link, which is audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some examples of books you can listen to on audible.com are our guest, Chris Field's new book, Disrupting for Good, and The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth, explore the books that are of interest to you, and receive one free audiobook when you sign up for the trial. As I mentioned, today we are talking with Chris Field about disrupting for good. So, Chris, before the sponsor break, I told you I was going to ask you. I am really curious about how it is you got this idea to try and put a stop to child slavery in Ghana.
Yeah, so I actually read a book in 2009 that mentioned child trafficking in Ghana, and honestly, my mind was blown. I mean, I thought I was pretty cultured and understood a lot of the things that were happening around the world, and I didn't even know this was a reality, that people, much less children, were still sold and held in slavery. And so I Googled the author's name, called her, asked her to go to Africa with her. And 3 months later, I stepped off a plane in Africa with her. And that first trip went out on the world's largest man-made lake in Ghana called Lake Volta, and was just heartbroken by what I saw, but also captivated by what it might look like to help solve this problem, what it might look like to help these children who had been sold into the fishing industry, kids who came from really poor families and worked for really poor fishermen, and just this vicious cycle of poverty. And so that's kind of how Mercy Project started. So I left my job soon, and 2010 started Mercy Project, and that's been my full-time job and passion ever since.
It's such a great example of, an everyday person being able to just, go ahead and make a decision, which actually leads me to my next question. So if we have people listening who have identified something in their business that they feel like, needs to change, how do they go about that? Like, can you give them some practical steps that they can follow to, get that process started?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last third of my book is what's called a disruption map, MAP. And this is my process for anybody, anywhere, being able to disrupt for good. So first is making a commitment. And I'll go back and talk about each of these individually, Diane, if you want further. But first is make a commitment. Second is action plan. And third is persist. So that's the disruption map. So let me elaborate on that briefly for you. So the first, making a commitment. This is where we're honest with ourselves, uncomfortable, and are we willing to do what needs to be done to create a new and better truth? And this is kind of the gut check, right? Because all of us have those things comfortable, and this process of disruption, the map, if you will, make a commitment, action plan, and persist. The making a commitment is just deciding that thing that bothers us, that truth that's uncomfortable, the part of our business, frankly, that's holding us back or that we don't like, that we're actually willing to do something about it. So that's the making a commitment. Am I willing to do what needs to be done to make this part of my business better? The second part, the action plan. This is where we actually write down the executable, actionable steps that are going to be required to move from a part of our business we're uncomfortable with to something that we can be proud of. So in the example I used with you of the car dealership, they knew they wanted buying a car to be a more positive experience. What we had to talk about was what actually has to happen from the moment somebody steps on the car lot to the time they buy the car to make buying a car more fun. And the answer was all the action steps. And at first it was only a couple action steps, and then it grew and it grew and it grew. And that's exactly what this does. It grows over time. And then the third one is honestly the most important, and that is to persist. Persist until transformation. And in all of the stories that are in my book, every single one, the people were different in race, they were different in socioeconomic status, they were different in education, they were different in passion. The one consistent thing across every story of ordinary disruptors I found was their willingness to persist, their willingness to show up and stick around until a new truth was born. So I hope that answers your question and giving some of the folks listening some insight or some kind of an impetus to help them start tackling some of these things they want to do better.
Oh my gosh, it does. Yeah, that's awesome. So I think of like major disruptors, and on some level there was a price that they had to pay for being a disruptor. Is that always the case?
Well, here's the thing. We're always paying a price for something. So in the business class I teach at Texas A&M University, I tell my students, every time you say yes, you're saying no to 1,000 other things. Yeah. Are you committed that the yes you're saying is worth and more valuable than the 1,000 things you're saying no to. So yes, I think true disruption is always going to cost something. Now, it may not cost money, but it's going to cost time and energy and expertise. But I think the greater cost, the one I spend my life trying to avoid, is the cost of regret, of getting to a point in my life later where I look back and I think, man, if only I had ... And so when I hear that little voice that says, hey, Chris, this thing shouldn't be like this, you should do something about that, I've learned to listen to that voice and to be responsive to that voice. And it hasn't steered me wrong yet.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because it's funny when I asked the question and then when you were answering it, I thought, okay, wait, there is such a cost to staying where you are.
Absolutely.
If it's not comfortable, right?
Yeah.
That sometimes that's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yep, that's right. And I think when the pain of the uncomfortability becomes enough, then we'll change. The question is just, are we going to do that on our terms or are we not, right? There was a lady in my book who lost almost 300 pounds with no surgery, no pills. She was walking stairs on her lunch break with her coworkers, okay? I mean, this is the slowest way she could have ever possibly lost this weight. She lost it. And there was all these things she talked about of reasons she probably should have been motivated to lose weight, seeing a certain number on the scale, health issues, being out of breath when she tied her shoes, all these things. It was the birth of a grandchild and not being able to run around with that grandchild at the park that finally the pain became too great for her. The truth, the uncomfortability of the truth of not being able to chase her grandchild around the park became enough that she said, enough is enough. I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to make an action plan, and I'm going to persist until transformation. And that's what she did. And that's what all of us, that's what I'm inviting every one of us to do, is to act on those uncomfortable truths. Because every single person listening, Diane, everyone, whether it's in their marriage, their parenting, their business, their relationships, every one of us has truths that we're uncomfortable with. I would put any amount of money on the world on that fact. The question is, are we uncomfortable enough that we're willing to do something about it? Do we have enough confidence on coming out the other side better, stronger than we are right now? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. It's just sometimes scary to get from point A to point B when we've never been there.
Right. Is that why so many people don't do it? Intellectually they know the reasons why they should, but they still don't take that action?
Yeah, I think it's scary. I mean, I think anything that we change feels frightening because it's unknown and it's vulnerable and we might fail. I think we're all very much more afraid of failure than we like to admit. We're afraid of looking silly. We're afraid of people looking at us like we messed up. And I don't know any successful entrepreneur that hasn't failed a whole bunch of times. I mean, we've got all these great stories of Walt Disney and Dr. Seuss and all these, the inventors and all these guys and women who did these incredible things. But it's somehow we feel like that doesn't apply to us, or, well, that's different because, and it's really not. It's more public. And there's cutesy little videos talking about their failures with nice music behind them that make us feel like, yes, I can do it. But the truth is, I'm just a regular guy that nobody knows. I've had a bunch of failures, and people don't know me for those failures. They know me for the 116 kids we've rescued out of child trafficking in Africa. They know me for starting the highest rated marathon in the state of Texas. They know me because I taught myself how to auctioneer and have now raised almost $1 million for charities through charity auctions. I mean, that's the stuff people know. They don't know all the junk and the ways I've failed. And they didn't see me driving around in my car by myself, practicing my auctioneering chant after watching YouTube videos and stumbling on that and mumbling my words and feeling like I'd never get it. Nobody sees all that, right? Everyone sees the confetti and the ticker tape and the trophy presentation and the Super Bowl. Nobody sees those guys in rehab after surgery or in the weight room at 4:00 in the morning. I mean, that's what we kind of forget. But yeah, I think that's why we don't disrupt, is because we're nervous. We're scared of failing.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And it's really interesting because listening to that, then I think, boy, we take ourselves so seriously.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And I think we think other people care more about what we do than we do. Right? It's like somebody said to me one time, I said, I hope I didn't wear this shirt last time I spoke to this group or last time I came to this class. And they said, Chris, nobody in this room cares what shirt you wore last time you were here. Like you're not that important. Nobody's taking fashion advice from you. So, but we tend to do that, right? We all tend to do that in 1,000 ways where we are so concerned about the opinions of others or something that it paralyzes us. And that's crazy because when we do that, like I said before, we're giving something up. I mean, there's a cost with status quo. There's a cost with not acting on truths that make us uncomfortable. And they're a great cost. Emotionally, there's a cost. We're not happy with ourselves. We're disappointed in ourselves. We're frustrated with ourselves. We're sad. We're lonely because we don't pursue relationships. I mean, I could go on, but I don't need to.
Well, I appreciate it though, because I think it is something people need to be reminded of. Sometimes we need to be pushed a little closer to the ledge.
Yeah.
So, right. So that we can really take a good look and go, okay, seriously, I really, this is uncomfortable and it doesn't have to be. It's interesting because I look at it and I think, boy, anyone who starts a business, I mean, that's a courageous thing.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, right? But they don't see it that way. And then they get stuck and then they're afraid to make a change, which is also a courageous thing.
Right.
Maybe they need to remind themselves that they've been courageous before.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, when I feel fear, one of the most important things I do is I name that fear and I name it to people who love me and support me. And I ask them to remind me of all the other times I felt fearful and was successful in spite of that fear. And sometimes we need those reminders that we are brave and we are courageous and we can do hard things. And that even if we happen to fail on this particular hard thing, it doesn't define us. We're the same brave, courageous, successful person that we were before the failure as we are afterwards. And I think that can be a really, powerful reminder. You said something, Diane, that kind of reminded me when you mentioned it, of kind of moving closer to the ledge. I think a lot of us forget our why. I think a lot of business owners, the freedom and the flexibility and the rush of being the boss, we forget that. And all of a sudden we look around our business and we're working in the business instead of on the business. We have no flexibility. We're never seeing our family. We're not around our kids. Like some of the reasons we said we were starting our own business. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of reasons I think this happens. I'll tell you the number one. This opens up a different can of worms, so we don't have time for private today, but I'll just say it. I think part of the biggest reason this happens is because we move the goalposts. And what we used to would have said, man, if I could just get here, my life would be complete. I mean, I would have everything I needed. And then all of a sudden we get there. Excuse me, Diane. We get there and we say, okay, that was good. But if I could just get here, then life would be everything I wanted it to be. And we just keep pushing it. And at some point we have to be honest and say, I'm never going to be satisfied if I keep moving the goalposts. And I need to remember why I do what I do every day. Why do I wake up? Why do I get out of bed? Why do I go to work? And if I can achieve that thing without some of this other pain that I'm bringing on myself, I need to be grateful that I can achieve that thing and embrace it and celebrate it instead of continuing to move the goalposts.
Yep. I think that's a great point. Wow. This is so great. So what is one thing you want people to take away from the book?
So if I just got to choose one, it would be that everybody, everywhere is capable of disruption.
Huh. Yeah. 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 I could see that. Yeah.
I have a 5-year-old in the book, Diane, a 5-year-old who started a recycling business because she came home from school after learning about recycling, and her parents told her that there was no recycling business or no recycling in their neighborhood, and someone would have to start a business if that was going to exist in their neighborhood. And the little girl said, fine, I'll start a recycling business. And over the next 2 years, from 5 to 7 years old, she picked up recycling in her neighborhood every Thursday morning before school, and they took it to the local recycling center, recycled 20,000 pounds of recycling and charged each one of those customers and saved up enough money to pay for her first semester of college, 5 years old.
Wow.
So when I say anybody, anywhere can become a disruptor, it's because I've seen 5-year-olds who had a truth they were uncomfortable with enough that they actually had action to solve that truth and to create a new and better truth. So if a 5-year-old pre-K kid can do it, I'm pretty sure anybody listening to this show has the tools they need to become a disruptor for good.
Pretty much. I agree with that. And it's so great when you look at it this way, that if there's a truth you're uncomfortable with, you need to change it. It's such an interesting way of looking at it. You know, it just feels so much more doable than feeling like disruption has to be this big, massive shift and change and almost like a volcano eruption. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, I think it's laying a brick every single day and trusting that over time there's going to be a path.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
yeah, and I think we lack, honestly, a lot of us, we lack the ability to show up every day. I mean, that's the number one piece of that persistence. Just show up every day. Show up every day. Remember your why and just put down another brick. Get that brick down and then come back the next day and do it again and again and again and again. And at some point, you're going to look up and you're going to look behind you and you're going to see you've got a real, legitimate path that you have built day after day. You didn't need big machinery to do it. You didn't need to go get a huge loan to do it. You didn't need 19 architects and 14 engineers involved to do it. You built a path one brick at a time. And that's really what this is about, showing up every day and putting down another brick.
Absolutely. Wow, this is just so great. First of all, thank you so much for spending this time and sharing this concept. It is really awesome. Will you tell the listeners how they can get the book, how they can get in touch with you, you know, everything they need to know, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is on Amazon. If they just search Disrupting for Good, Chris Field. And as you said, it's on Audible as well. So if they prefer to listen to their books, they can get it on there. Same way, Disrupting for Good, Chris Field. And I actually did the read for that myself, which was a lot of fun. And otherwise, if they want to go to meetchrisfield.com to interact with me there, send me a message. I've been doing some speaking around the country and would love to come speak to any groups that would maybe find it helpful to kind of hear this message or to spend a day kind of working through it in their business. So those are the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks to our listeners. I think you guys got an awful lot out of today's podcast. I know I did. and our sponsor. Please remember to get your free trial and free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth. Continue to prosper and be curious. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Great careers are forged out of great relationships. Your success, whatever your field, relies and thrives on the support and insights of others. I'm Andy Lapata, an author and speaker on the power of professional relationships. In the Connected Leadership podcast, I have the privilege of interviewing people from around the world to understand the relationships that have made a difference on their journey and how their insights can help you. From Nobel Prize winners to Olympians, from NASA astronauts to peace campaigners, my guests have shared some captivating moments from their lives and careers. Combined with experts from leading universities, cutting-edge authors and giants of business, the Connected Leadership podcast aims to inspire, educate and entertain.